Hey y'all, it's your girl Jamaica coming back live. Well, it's not live, it's pre-recorded. Sorry y'all. It is what it is. But okay, so of course I did not want to skip a day, did not want to miss a day. Listen, y'all. This morning in my room, we were talking about a black constitution, right? What is needed? Is it needed? Is it to be desired? What would be the plus and negative of having a black constitution? And so for me, one of the questions that I had when we were having this conversation was, what is community? Because before we could start talking about having any additional constitution, any additional documents saying how we should deal with people's rights and their treatment or whatever else, standards of living, just like standards of operations or expectations, whatever it may be. One of the things that I was questioning is, what is community first? Because what I think, right, I think is, we as individually, many black people feel as though when we say we and we talk about black people among the spectrum of black African Americans, or Caribbean, Afro Caribbean, or whatever else, all these different diasporas of black people, because it's culturally different, one. But when we try to formulate this idea, this generic idea of what this group of people need in order to be considered some type of level of happiness, level of, what can you say? Uh, I'm trying to get the words. Pursuit of happiness. That was the idea that I was thinking about. Pursuit. But when we are at a grandiose level, try to think about this. For me, I think that looks different for each individual. Whether, and especially when you talk about economics and all these different things, it varies. So for us to have this idea of what our pursuit of life should look like and what would make us excellent, that idea is going to vary based off of the people who need it. And I think one of the questions that brought me to this was because we talked about creating, like, what do we think that we need a black constitution, and then if we created it, what would be in it? And we talked about like the regular American constitution and the preamble and so many other pieces, right? um but within all of those different things in the conversation that happened this morning, I was just like, because these things look so different to so many people, so many different individuals, how can we say what someone needs? And we need to also be able to say whether or not these people can volunteer to hold themselves accountable um to that law, to those laws or those expectations. And so even within that, that's where this question of community came from, right? Hopefully this makes sense, because I know I'm rushing into it. I ain't really give y'all a whole lot of backdrop, but I got look. I really, really wanted to make sure I didn't miss a day, y'all. I've been nonstop all day today, and I didn't want to miss a day of posting videos. So, my question though is, what makes a community? Like, do you believe that you have a community? What makes up your community? And what are some of the values that you hold in your community with these shared groups of people, with these individuals? Because I think all of those things have to be taken into consideration, and all of those things can change um, based off of perception, economics, location, all of this. Because, of course, y'all already know, I believe that each individual should have their own set of rights and expectations and guidelines and goals that they hold themselves accountable to. And of course, as we create community, or this idea of community, we will flush out who's supposed to be there, or who gets along with these same morals and principles that some of us have and some of us don't. Some of us tend to lean more towards, and some of us won't. Um, and I brought up this one point, and I was kind of talking about like historically, like I was like a lot of the people who were in the room today, I was like all of us are maybe somewhere to middle class or higher end middle class economics. And so within that we have different exposures, whether it's like your religion or your expectations as far as, school abilities or um what was religion, school, um community service. Like there was all these things that I listed out, and I was like every person does not have those same foundational steps or beliefs or values or whatever you want to call it. And so of course for me, when I was thinking about all of those things, I was like, because they don't have that, I was like, although you think that we have like an unwritten black code or whatever, and you feel like we could start writing that code out and turn it into a black constitution, at the end of the day, that may or may not happen. And again, I don't want to dive too much into that piece and that part of it because that's not my lane. But my lane is how do we create community? Because the black community in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, and early 2000s, where our community started to shift, the black community then, you had one neighborhood that housed the poorest of the poor to the richest of the richest of blacks. And so you had this great variation. And so you had people who wanted to strive to do better because they saw better in their community. And now, this idea of community doesn't really exist. Like you live in neighborhoods, and so you share this location with other people, but it doesn't mean that these people are are your community, right? It doesn't mean that you know these people by name, you know their parents, grandparents. It's not a long standing community like many people have. So how do we formulate a community? What would a community be? And especially with how things are now online, the community is even broader and broadened by technology. So what is that for you? And so I mean, I'm just posing some questions. I know I said a whole lot of nothing and a whole lot of something at the same time, but for you, how do you formulate your community? What is your idea of community? How do you formulate your community? And then what type of community do you have, and what do you provide to your community, and what can your community provide for you, or what do they provide for you currently? It's just some thoughts that I was having, and I really want to have this as a discussion because um I think that there's a need for a stronger community. And I'm not just saying that as like, oh, well, the black community, blah, 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 blah. No, like in general, like how do we build this cohesiveness amongst the people who we spend probably the most time with, or in the areas that we spend the most time with, time in, excuse me. But y'all let me know. If you haven't already, go up top, subscribe to the club. I'm just trying to have some conversations out here, just thinking through some stuff. Um, Subscribe, like a video, go watch some other videos. I'm usually put together, but today was a rush. But I know I wanted to say something about building community before the day was over. Um, but yeah, y'all, like, subscribe, comment down below so that we can really have this conversation about community. Because, I mean, building a community is very vital and important, especially depending on what it is that you want to do and how you want to progress in life. And you need certain people in your corner. And so for me, I'm building my community now. And hopefully, if you're watching this video, you may be able to be a part of that. So let me know any of those questions, answer any of the questions that I've asked before. But what is community to you? So, you guys, I'm going to go. It's about that time. Sleep o'clock. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Love you.